What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Uh, this video, we're going to have a spoiler discussion of Together, starring Dave Franco and Alison Brie. The movie was brought to you by Neon Studios. If you haven't seen the movie, I would advise you go check the movie out and check out the non-spoiler review. Otherwise, if you want to hang around for the goods and you want the full details, then hang around and we're going to get into it. Keep in mind, I'm just going to talk about the significant stuff, the certain parts of the movie, while providing certain details, just some of the important stuff. So the opening scene in the movie takes place where you got these two dogs wandering off in the woods, and you gather from hearing the people in the woods that it's a search party, and these dogs, they go in a cave, and pretty much while they're in this cave, they see a pool of water and they start drinking from the water. Later, the guy comes, finds a dog in the woods, and they're just staring at each other. They're doing a mannequin challenge. Later on that evening, as the guy is, prepping his family for bed, he's sleeping and he hears some commotion in his kennel. And when he finds his dogs, um, and it's a quick scene to where the dogs are merged together and it's just one head. That scene reminds me of The Thing, the 1982 version where the Huskies were pretty much having an issue inside the kennel, but the dogs were merged together. And you got the one head, and the queen. And the scene is so quick, and then it goes to the title of the movie. Um, so we get to Dave Franco's character, Tim. He's an aspiring musician. And you're also introduced to Alison Brie. Her character is Millie. She's a teacher. And you gather the scene itself is a going away party. And so as they're making their little going away speeches, Allison has this discussion prior to their speech about her surprise to she hasn't talked to her BFF about this surprise that she wants to present to Tim. So basically, while he's making his speech, Allison gets down on her knee, um, in where she prepares to make an attempt to propose to him. And it's like, dude, read the room. He's a young guy, but he's a nervous wreck. He's just all over the place, and I guess it's a little bit of excitement, but he's kind of overwhelmed, I guess, with change. And and so when he doesn't acknowledge the proposal, um, Allison starts to feel some kind of way, and she starts to carry these emotions with her throughout the rest of the film because she feels that Tim at this point is going to start giving her mixed signals, and I'll explain all of that. So the first night out in this house in this remote area, they start having discussions. He's like, he don't know what happened. He's making excuses as to why he didn't acknowledge the proposal. And at this point, she starts having mixed feelings, whether or not she wants to be in a relationship with him or she wants to stay together and they want to work it out. And a few moments later, here's the first episode, this one creepy scene where, she's like, cuts the light out and she says, I can't sleep with them staring at us. It's hard to sleep when they're staring at us. And he looks at the foot of the bed and he sees this other couple at the foot of the bed. And this lady is staring at him with this creepy gaze. And she's got like black fluid coming from her eyes. And she's talking to him. And he is like literally frozen, just, scared stiff. And he's kind of like trying to raise the cover so that, and as he's raising the cover, her face emerges from underneath the blanket and just goes directly into him. And, you know, he wakes up bright and early in the morning. Um, they're introduced to Jamie, and he's the neighbor in the community, and the usual thing. He welcomes them to the neighborhood. House on the corner, yellow house on the corner. And from that point on, they decide to take a nature trail. They decide to take a hike down the nature trail just to get out of the house. And once they're out of the house, and they decide to go along this trail, Tim sees these bells. It's like another footpath, and he sees these bells. And the footpath is kind of designed a certain kind of way. And these bells have symbols on them. And at this point, Millie is like ready to go back. The weather is changing and it's starting to rain. And but Tim insists that he wants to go down and check, just to see curiosity what's at the end of this trail. So they continue down this trail with these bells that are alongside this weird footpath, and they get lost, and they can no longer navigate through the woods. They lose their signal. It's just gone from the GPS, and Tim falls into this hole, and Millie goes over there to check on him, and she goes down there to render aid. And at this point, the storm gets bad. They're looking around, and they make jokes of, they see Bale and church pictures. So, they gather that some church might have collapsed or a landslide somehow. This old church winded up underground. So Tim goes to the puddle, and he gets some water, try to dehydrate himself, and he gets a container, and she drinks the water too. They go to sleep. They wake up in the morning, and they get themselves together, and their legs are stuck together. Upon pulling their legs apart, it's not really an easy thing because they're attached. So they make it out of the woods. They make it back home, and at this point, Tim is like having another episode, and he's just, his mind, he's going in and out while Millie is talking to him. She's fresh out the shower, and Tim decides to give her a massage. But he, as he's doing it, his fingers, start to sink into her skin, like he's, and Millie stops him because it begins, she's uncomfortable and it's a little bit too rough for him. But he comes out of this trance, and he, and his, the look on his face is like, he don't know what he just did or what just happened. So she tells him to go take a shower. She goes off to work. While he's in the shower, every turn that she makes, and as soon as she pulls forward, his body goes back into this trance. He has another episode, and he's just all over the place in this shower booth, and he's cracking the towels. Like his body is just pressed up against the towels and up against the glass in every direction that she turns, and he has no control of his body, as if they have some type of magnetic connection where he's just drawn to her at this point. And wherever she turns, if she turns left, he's on the left side of the shower. He's just all over the place to where she comes to a complete stop and he passes out. He goes to visit the local doctor, and he explains his episode. The local doctor prescribes him with some muscle relaxer, and it's supposed to help him with his stress. The doctor also shares with him that where he's at, you're just going to assume that he may have had a discussion with the doctor about him and Millie, Tim, them being lost in the woods and where they live at. And the doctor tells them that they're lucky that they made it out because there was a couple that got lost in those same woods. So he goes home, Tim goes home and does some digging, does some research. and he reads these articles about this missing couple. Um, Allison meets up with Allison meets back up with Tim, and they're having a discussion, and they start making light about the couple's social media posts and how that was their last post, and if they was in the same situation, what would their last post be? And there was a picture of them, and I believe that there was a situation where they went bungee jumping. So Millie picked the picture that she requested to be their last post if something were to happen to them. Um, anyway, Jamie stops by, and at this point, he's kind of like the guest, the dinner guest, and they get to talking and joking, trying to get to know each other. And during the interaction, you start noticing Tim's behavior, the way that he's looking at Allison, and he starts having these episodes like his attitude is just all over the place, and it's just something that he's trying to maintain himself, but it's hard for him to do because he's like going in and out. So Jamie leaves, and there's, once again, you know how it is with, when one person feels like there's some type of jealousy, like some tension in the air, but on a level of being jealous. And but they make light of it. They make jokes about it. And then all of a sudden, Tim just throws his body onto her, and they start making out at the front door. But then while they're kissing, their mouths get attached and they pull away, and Millie suspects um, Tim to be too rough with her, like as if Tim bit her on the mouth while they were making out. And once again, um, Allison still feels some kind of way about whether or not if Tim wants to be with her, or if he just wants to move on and do his own thing. And this is the type of interaction that they have throughout the movie, because once again, this all started from her attempt um, with proposing to him, and from this point on, she's carrying those emotions. And you can see they try to get along, and but they try to connect and they try to get along, and then somebody's always throwing some stuff in their face, some doing something kind of petty, like a simple relationship or whatever. But Allison still, she feels some kind of way still. And so the next scene, uh, he has a gig to go to, um, and she preps to take him to the train station so he can go perform on her way to work. She drops him off at the train station, and you notice still, that he's just not himself anymore. You can tell his body is just coming and going. The way he's just looking at Millie, his body, he's like in and out of it. And she drops him off, and she goes to work. And while he's sitting there waiting for the train, he starts having another episode again, and his body is just, he is like he has this urge, this uncontrollable urge where he cannot be away from her. And she's at work, and she's having a conversation with her BFF through the chat while the kids are, at school at recess. And she looks out the window and she sees Tim, at the playground on the school. He just managed to walk all the way from the train station, leaving his bags to her job, to the school. And she sees him out there at the playground. And she goes out there, and they go into the kids' bathroom, then in the restroom, and she's like, what are you doing here? why are you here? And, mind you, this is her first job, and she's only been there at this point. I say maybe 3 days, 2 or 3 days gone by, or whatever. But this is her first job, and she just got here. She just started working, and Tim starts having this episode again. He throws himself on her. They start making out, and they go in the bathroom stall, and they get into it. And um, so they get into it. They start making out, and they're interrupted by a little boy. I guess he overhears them getting it in, and you can just see his feet, and he just leaves. So at this point, they're like, all right, it was fun. It was good while it lasted. I don't know what happened. They start making jokes about it. And, but Tim, he still can't believe it because once again, he tries to convince her, like he wants to tell her that something is wrong. And then it's like he feels like she's not going to believe him because of the issues that they're already having from the failed proposal attempt. And he knows that he has he knows something's wrong with him, and he has involuntary control of his body, whatever's going on with him that's drawing him towards Millie when they're apart. And so they're trying to separate, and his genitals are stuck inside of her. Like they're literally attached, and he's trying to force his penis, pull himself out of her vagina. They're trying to separate, and they're literally stuck together. And this scene was hilarious. This joint was funny. And Jamie, um, he comes in the bathroom, and I guess the little boy told on him, and he's just checking on them, and they managed to get themselves apart before Jamie walks into the bathroom, and she comes out of the stall, and she's like, um, I'm all right, and he suspects that something is going on until he sees the blood running down her leg. She's like wearing this dress, and so he's like, oh, okay, female problems, all right. And as he walks off, he sees Tim, who was standing on top of a toilet stool. He see his legs come down from the toilet as he's making his way to leave them. So later on, um, they Tim and Millie go back home, and they, you can tell they had an argument, and she's still kind of upset because in her mind it's like she's getting mixed signals from Tim. And Tim, at this point is trying to explain to her that something's going on with him, but it's hard for him to get that across to her because, once again, she's still emotionally hurt. Whether she doesn't know whether if Tim wants to be with her or he wants to be off and do his own thing. He wants to be single because, Millie loves this dude. But she's, she in her mind, she feels like she's getting mixed signals, and they're having this argument. And she mentions that her parents are coming to see them soon for dinner, and she doesn't know whether or not that if she even wants to tolerate his behavior anymore. So they separate. She goes off to Jamie's house, and she goes over there to vent. And Jamie's like, what's going on? Y'all cool? And she's like, well, she apologizes for her behavior in school. And he kind of brushes off like, it's okay, female problems. But Jamie already knew what the deal was, but he's not really tripping. And she was like, it ain't gonna happen no more. And she mentions to Jamie that her and Tim got into an argument, and he goes to the kitchen, gets her a glass of water, try to keep her cool. And then he mentions to her that, he too had somebody, that he was in love with, and they had their problems as well. He had a boyfriend or a husband that he was married to, and he had to learn from his mistakes and what he had to do to make things better. He gives her a little pep talk, and so while they're talking, she glances over Jamie's shoulder and she sees Tim out the window in the backyard just eavesdropping, but he's just drawn back there. It's like he can't be apart from her. He's standing in the backyard like Michael Myers. He's just standing there. And so she just abruptly just cuts off she no longer talks to him. Jamie is like, he wants to share some footage of, the wedding, but Millie just is like, all right, I gotta go. I gotta go back home. She just ends the conversation. And as she's leaving, Tim meets up with her and they're walking back to the house and they're holding hands. And Tim, they got to the next scene and she's in bed and it's like, she's still mad with him. She's still upset with him. And, but the scene where just before that, when he meets up with her, she reluctantly doesn't want to hold his hand, but she just immediately, you start to see her responding to him, like connecting together. Even though she's mad at him, it's like you can just start to see her body reactions now coming around. So he goes downstairs, he leaves her upstairs to sleep, and he's on the computer. And while he's on the computer, um, he he's alerted by the banging on the door. They have this glass sliding double door, and he sees Millie pressed up against the door, up against the glass, and he's sitting down. Her body is just moving in sync with his. So as soon when he stands up, her body rises up. So they cut to one scene on the opposite side of the glass where she is pressed so hard up against this glass, like her feet is literally like 6 inches off the floor. Like she is like literally on the glass. Like I said, it's just this magnetic effect. And her body is involuntarily just drawn to him. So now she starts having these episodes. And, when he moves, as he moves, her body just slides over in sync with his. And he opens the door and she just immediately her body is just thrown into his and he's on the floor trying to wake her up. Like she is still asleep and her body is just moving around while she's unconscious. And he slaps her to wake her up. And she responds to the slap and she comes out of it and she's just freaking out, like, what are you doing? Why did you hit me? And he's like, you know, um, you asleep, and he's freaking out because he's having these episodes and he's trying to convince her. So now they're talking and he's trying to convince her at this point. He's like, all right, he's trying to talk some sense into it. He's trying to tell her what's been going on and she ain't buying it. She don't want to believe it. So he's like, all right, if he makes an attempt to prove it to her. And like I said, once again, she's having mixed emotions and she's starting to think that, his behavior is starting to drive her crazy. And she, at this point, is like, she don't want to even tolerate him anymore. And so he tries to prove it to her. He puts his, he says, put your hand up. And she doesn't want to listen. So when she walks away from him, he calls her name and she just stops. And he reveals to her that, he can sense like that this supernatural situation, this supernatural thing that's happening to them. He can feel her feelings, like he knows what's going on with her emotionally. And it's a very strong connection that he has with her, far beyond, his emotions. And but you can see in her face that she's like in denial with it. She doesn't want to say anything, and she walks away from him, and she makes it known that he shouldn't even be in the house. He needs to leave when the sun comes up before the parents get there for dinner. She don't want him there no more. She done with him. And so as she's walking away, the blood that was coming from her nose, that was basically on the floor and along the table, um, makes a course. The blood is moving towards Tim. Her blood is moving towards Tim off the table, and just immediately just makes course corrections. Just the plasma, the blood is just drawing itself to Tim. And so later on that night, they're upstairs in two separate bedrooms. She closed the door. He leaves his door open, and he's laying in bed. A few minutes go by, and he wakes up, and he's in the hallway. Like his body is just being dragged down the hall, and he's trying to stop himself, and he can't stop himself. So he manages to extend his limbs out in the hallway to where he's in a position where he can't move any further. He has like his foot on one part of the door panel, and his he's got his body stretched out to where he's trying to stop himself from being pulled towards Millie. All that at the same time, he hears the banging coming from Millie's bed, the bedroom where Millie is at, on the opposite side of the door. And the door opens up, and Millie is in a position, the same, if for all my old heads that seen The Exorcist, and if you can remember the spider scene where she's just like crawling backwards going up the stairs, that's the position that Millie is in. Her body is like bent over backwards, and she's like hanging upside down, but she is still asleep, but the body is moving, and the body is being drawn towards Tim. They're being drawn towards together. And once she hits the floor, and her body is just sliding across the wood and in a rough manner, just wiggled around like she's a rag doll, right? Like she's just thrown to the floor, and like she's a rag doll. And she wakes up. I guess when her head strikes the floor, she wakes up, and she's trying to gain some type of control. And she realizes now that she has no control. She realizes that Tim was telling the truth, and now she's convinced. And they are literally being, like I said, it's just this supernatural magnetic pull that's drawing these two together by force, and it's really strong. And she realizes, and she's starting to experience what Tim had been telling her. She's experiencing it, and she has no control, and it doesn't matter what she's doing. And it gets to the point now that at the closest that she gets to Tim now has just hit her, and they're on the floor, and their arms, her right arm reaches for his left arm, and they connect. And it gets to the point to where their bodies, their each other arms, her right arm is now inside of his left arm, and it's just connecting into one. They merge into each other. The arms merge into each other, and they're freaking out. And Tim tells her to reach over into the drawer. He has muscle relaxers, and they need to take the muscle relaxers to try to buy them some time. And she can't open it because of, funny moment, the childproof lock, the childproof container. So she flings the container over to him, and he manages to get it open. and he's mashing the tablets, and the pills are scattered all over the place. And they're eating it off the floor. It's at the point to where they're taking as much as they can. And Tim is over there snorting some of the stuff up. He's crunching it up like they're eating this stuff like Skittles, like M&Ms. And we cut to the next scene. Um, the muscle relaxer puts, Tim fades out. So the next scene, early in the morning, Millie has Tim tied up like he's in bondage on a chair, and she's straddled on top of him because her right arm is still attached to his left arm, but only in a position where their forearms are attached like this. And he looks over and he sees this electric knife, this electric saw, and she has some whiskey. Pick your poison, whatever alcohol you think it is. Hennessy, E&J, Christian Brothers, whiskey, cognac, whatever. Right? It's just thick bottle of brown liquor. It could be Don Julio, and she gives him the alcohol to try to get him drunk, try to tolerate the pain. And she's, because she's at this point, he makes it known that he can smell her, and she's fried, she drunk too. And she's been drinking it, and she's come to a decision to where the muscle relaxer did what it's supposed to do, but it just didn't do enough. And now their forearms are stuck together. And he reminds her that she's right-handed, and she's trying to control this saw with her left hand. And it's a funny moment where she cuts it on, and it's just, it's all over the place. But he's scared, but then it's like, all right, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's get it over with. So now she gets the cutting, and they don't really show as much as you think they're going to show, because it just cuts to the next scene where they're in the kitchen sitting across from each other. And they got their arm in bandages, and he realizes, he checks the container, and they're down to 2 tablets. And he's, they're trying to come up with some type of solution on how they're going to address this, because her parents are going to be arriving soon, like the next day, and they gotta come up with some type of idea. They gotta come up with something, and because they know they can't separate. It doesn't matter if he leaves or she leaves or wherever they go. Supernaturally, this force, this magnetic force within their bodies, whatever it is that's in that water, is pulling them together. And they're trying to figure out what they, what options do they have. He feels that they need to go back down to that cave and look around, try to look for some clues. And she's like, nah, we need to go to the hospital. We need to get some more some more medicine to try to buy some more time so we can try to figure something out. And she doesn't agree with him going back down to that cave at all. She's come to her senses, and now she believes him. All those emotions are gone. Whatever grudge she had against him, like, now she's on board with him, and she realizes what's going on, and now they got to figure something out. So they go outside, and once he agrees, okay, let's go to the hospital, and she realizes she can't find her car keys. She can't find the keys at all. So she suspects that she might have left her keys at Jamie's house when they had their argument. And he's like, why in the world would you leave your keys over there? And she's like, I don't know. I'm mad. Emotions got in the way. One of them drinks, one of them things, right? So she decides to go to Jamie's house to go just to see if she left her keys over there from her last visit. And she tells Tim to stay put, not to go back to that cave, stay put until I get back, because they don't want to take no chance of being close to each other at the same time. So once she goes off to Jamie's house to search for her keys, Tim sneaks off into the woods, and he goes down in the woods looking for clues. And he sees, prior to him going into the woods, he goes to the house to grab some rope, and he notices the bells, and they were the same bells that was in the social media post that the couple had, that he seen these bells in the background with the same symbols. The bells in the woods match the bell in the picture. He's putting two and two together. He's in the cave, and he sees that this cave, he sees this, some religious pictures, but he also sees this one picture where it's a picture of two demons that are merged together, like two entities. Now, I'm just going to say that they're demons. Whatever they are, their backs, or they're back to back, but they're connected. And he has a oh-ish moment. He tried to rush out of the cave. Along the same time, while he's doing that, Jamie is snooping around. Millie goes to Jamie's house. The door is unlocked, and she's just snooping around looking for her keys. And she hears a TV, and she looks down the hall, and she sees a video playing, and it's a ceremony, a ritual, that's being played on a videotape. And so she walks down the hall, and it's one of those moments. Me, I wouldn't waste the time going down there, but it's okay. It's a movie. It's one of those moments. She has to go down there and watch this stupid video. And so she's watching this ritual, and she sees these two guys, and one of the guys, and you're watching the video, and you notice that one of the guys has a resemblance to Jamie, but you see the two guys, and it's a ceremony where they're getting married, and they go through this ritual, and the significant other is cut open on the arm, and he's bleeding from the forearm. And so the two guys that are going through this marriage ritual, the rest of the congregation, they go down into this lair, that's inside of this church, where she sees, the cave that they were in inside this lair, and they're surrounding this pool that they saw. And that's where she starts to suspect that from what she was told, that church was actually the buried church was actually the ritual for this cult that was doing this weird stuff. And they were doing this, having these ceremonies. It's just something about this water that has a supernatural effect. And the couples, they're immersed into this water. And before she can watch the rest of the video, Jamie comes from out of the side of the room, and he's explaining to her that this ceremony has to do with two people. If they love each other, then two become one, basically. And that he knows that she's been going through this process, and it makes you wonder now. I guess when he gave her a glass of water, from her last visit, then that probably sealed the deal. And but he knows what she's going through. He knows what's going on with her and Tim, and he's telling her she needs to finish the process. She just needs to go along with it, and it is, it ain't really nothing she can do. If she really loves Tim, and they love each other, then she's gonna have to accept it, because that's the only way that she can get past this situation. And as he's rubbing her, he reaches out for her left arm, and he has he snatches his arm back and he cuts her left arm, her forearm open. And underneath his ring, he has these small little razor blades, these blades that he cut her arm open with. So she just smacks the hell out of him. And upon her giving Jamie the pimp slap, um, the right side of his face is deformed. So from that from that moment, you discover that those two guys merged together and they became Jamie. They became one person who is Jamie, who is now Jamie. And he reveals to himself that that was them two, that was their situation, and they have become one. That's just something, that you're going to wind up putting two together once he's talking and you see the video and you see the resemblance and you see that, the aftermath of the pimp slap, that it was them two who are now one person. She runs out of the house, and Tim and Millie, they meet up. And as soon as they meet up, they stop fully in their tracks and they try to keep their distance. But at this point, they're forced together. And he tries to stop himself. She tries to stop herself. And he's like, hold on for a minute. Let me back up. So prior to him coming out that cave, before he reconnected with Millie, and he's down in that cave snooping around and he sees this demonic picture. The missing couple are one. He meets the missing couple. They just come out of nowhere. And they're deformed. And this couple had, there's a knife in their neck. And you can see it's, just kind of reminds me of The Thing, right? This couple, they're merged together, but it's a grotesque look. They're deformed and it's ugly. And they're calling out to Tim for help. And these roots, they're not really roots. They're like organic parts, like intestines. It's as if the cave itself is alive. And a part of these roots or whatever these organic parts are, they grabbed him and he stuck to the ground. He manages to free himself by coming out of his jacket as this grotesque thing is crawling towards him. And he pulls the knife out of this thing. But this thing, the couple who are merged together that went missing, that's the couple. And he pulls the knife out and he manages to escape. He climbs out of the cave and gets free. So now let's pick up. Millie, Tim, they meet up. Millie runs out of Jamie's house. Tim is free from the cave. They're apart. They stop in their tracks, but now they're voluntarily being forced together. And this magnetic pull, and it's like the more they resist, the stronger the pull is, the stronger this supernatural magnetic force is that's pulling them together. So Tim says, "Hey, I got an idea." And it's so as soon as they let up and they stop resisting, they lean towards their emotions to where they have to acknowledge each other with love, how much, that they're attracted to each other. And the resistance lets up to where they have full control of their bodies. And that goes back to what Jamie's had told her, that they have to be willing to accept that situation of being close together towards one another. And so Tim comes up with the idea where he pulls the knife out and he wants to attempt to kill himself. And but he sees what gets his attention is that when Millie tries to stop him, and she now knows that he really loves her. He expresses himself how much he loves her, and he's willing to sacrifice himself. He's willing to counsel himself. I don't want to use the other word. I'll try not to use the other word again. Well, I don't want to get no copyright strikes. But he tries to counsel himself with the knife towards his throat, and she tries to stop him, but he notices blood coming from the sleeve of her arm, and she has a deep wound. And he tries to stop the bleeding, and she just passes out. And he consoles her. She's laying in his lap. So we cut to the next scene. She's laying on a couch, and you can see that she's fully healed. She's not as pale looking as she was moments ago, and she's trying to figure out, okay, what happened. And he was like, well, I don't want to lose you, and I had to stop the bleeding. And she notices that his right hand, is now merged into her left arm, and her arm is healed, but there, her left forearm is now connected and merged with his right hand. It's one now, and they come to the point to where they start expressing their love for each other, and they don't want to be without each other. So he plays their song. I believe it was the first night that they met. He pulls out a Spice Girls record, and I can't remember the name of the song, but the song holds significance. I guess I don't want to be together, or I don't want to be apart, something long like that. But it's a Spice Girls song, and it's their first song. The night that they met, he plays it on the record, and now it's like, look, let's go ahead and get it in. And they take their clothes off, and as they're standing there naked and they're making out, their bodies start merging together. And just like what you saw in the glimpse of the trailer, you see their two eyelashes and their eyeballs, they merge together. So the camera pans back, and you see now that their body, they're just standing there deformed. You see just one deformed two figures, like they're just literally, it's like a deformed clay model. Just they're both just standing there while the song is playing. So we cut to the next day, and you see Millie's parents. They pull up in the driveway, and they notice the blood in the driveway as they get out of the car. And they knock on the door, and there's a fully new formed human being. Millie and Tim, they have now merged into one person, and this individual opens the door, greeting, him or herself. This individual opens the door, revealing, and that's the end of the movie. The parents meet this different person who answered the door, but you can see where the face, you can see the two have become one. You can just see it in the face of this individual that answers the door when Millie's parents knock. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. Um, this movie is wild. It's got its funny moments. With with just to start off from, like, everything just kind of started off from the failed engagement, and she carried these emotions with her. And when mentioned in the non-spoiler that, my man, you gotta get it together, Tim, get it together, dude. Like, before they even went into the woods, that situation could have been prevented, and he could have done something to where um, she wouldn't feel that kind of way anymore. I guess he just has a hard time trying to. He has a way with trying to communicate with her, and the way that his character is, I guess he has to get used with adapting to change, and he's kind of nervous about um being away, from. It's kind of like one of them situations where you got to get used to change, and he's moving to a different location, with his fiance or his girlfriend, I should say. They're moving away together, and he kind of feels some kind of way, but you can tell he's kind of nervous about it, and he's kind of overwhelmed, because he wants to get his career off the ground as well, and he doesn't want to feel like he has anything, like something's holding him back. He really wants to get his career off the ground. And at the same time, Millie is passionate about, she got a new job, and this is a new life for them, and they're in a peaceful, calm, and remote location. Um, and I do care about these characters. I do understand Tim's situation, but what could they have done after they had drank that water and got themselves in that situation? I mean, and it's not like they were aware about it, but I don't know. I probably wouldn't have spent the night in a creepy cave with, just knowing that a church got buried underneath of it, and I definitely wouldn't have drank some water that somebody probably, out of a pool that somebody probably could have took a dump or a piss in. Um, that just wouldn't be me. But for storytelling purposes, I just found that to be entertaining. And it is what it is. But to me, those scenes in this movie, they were hilarious. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you choose to go to the movies and watch it in a theatrical platform, you can go ahead and do that and make sense of it, the movie for yourself. Especially if you like you're a horror fan and you like all the weird stuff. You used to watching anthology series like Tales from the Crypt, especially if you saw The Substance. You like all that weird stuff. And I'm a horror fanatic. I'm a nerd, and I have my moments, and I like being entertained to watch all of that stuff. The edginess and the comedy and some of the humor. And so if you into all of that stuff, then you'll probably, especially if you got a sense of humor, you'll probably wind up enjoying this movie. But once again, you can save your $10 or $20 and wait for it to come to streaming. With that being said, new to the channel, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be updated on more content. Shout out again to my return subscribers. Thank you for taking your out of your personal day, your personal time to come back to my channel and to be viewing my content. That being said, take care of yourselves. Till next time. Peace.